Huawei have just released the P30 series and you might be looking to upgrade. But are these phones a big enough upgrade from, for example, the Mate 20 series or the P20 series to warrant you spending the cash? The P30 is coming with an OLED screen, new design here, 6.1 inches there. You've got the water drop notch on the top. Really good looking screen, this one. It comes with 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, a triple camera on the back there. You've got a Kirin 980 processor and a under-screen fingerprint sensor. The P30 Pro is a bigger device than the P30. It's got a 6.5 inch screen. This is a big phone and it is actually quite thick as well. You've got a quad camera on the back there. Well, Huawei call it a quad camera. There are 3 imaging units and the 4th one is a time of flight sensor. I don't really know how much that helps the cameras in any way, but you have 3 imaging units at the back there. You've got an under-screen fingerprint sensor in that one too, and of course the Kirin 980 chip as well. All in all, just to touch on these 2 phones, really impressed with them. Obviously, the main selling point of the P30 Pro is that 5x optical zoom, 50 times with digital zoom. Now actually, I'm really impressed with the 5x optical zoom out of that P30 Pro. I mean, really impressed. You can get incredibly sharp, crisp, detailed images of things that are really far away. Now Huawei have given us digital zoom on this one up to 50 times. If you're zooming in anything more than about 15 times, things start to get very shaky and a little bit blurry. Now that's not a problem with the phone, that just happens when you're zooming in so far and you're holding something in your hand. So if you're taking shots on anything more than about 10-15 times, then you're gonna have to use it on a tripod or balance it on the table. Having said that, it's a feature that's there. 50 times zoom gets a little bit grainy as well, but we've not seen this in many other smartphones. Huawei is definitely pushing the boundaries of what you can put in a smartphone camera. So first, let's have a look at the P20 and the P30. Is the P30 a good enough upgrade over the P20 or other phones before that to warrant spending the money? I see a lot of phones and I review a lot of phones from lots of different manufacturers. I'm always looking at different phones with different designs. So I'm not often surprised, but as soon as I walked in there, got the P30, I was shocked at just how much the P30 is different from the P20. This is a huge upgrade, at least in the design area. Let's have a look at both of the phones. The P20 now looks like an old device. You have that big notch at the top there that looks a little bit like an iPhone. Then at the bottom, you have a huge bezel. So big that they've managed to put a fingerprint sensor in the bezel. Now, actually, in terms of function, I have no problems with that. It's a really simple and effective solution to unlocking the phone. You know that fingerprint sensor works, you know where it is, you can feel it without looking for it. Wow, the P30 compared to the P20 is such a huge upgrade in terms of the design. The P30 has a much bigger screen as well, 5.8 inches on the P20, 6.1 inches on the P30. But the actual size of both of these phones doesn't differ by more than a few millimeters in every direction. What they've been able to fit onto the same size body is a really big leap forward. Not to mention that the screen on the P30 is an OLED screen, on the P20 is an LCD screen. What I can see is a huge upgrade from one to the other. In terms of the processor as well, you go from a Kirin 970 to a Kirin 980. In fact, in terms of video capability, they're pretty much the same. There's not too much of an improvement in terms of 4K video recording. They both do it. And slow-mo, they both have the same specs. there as well. Of course, with the new processor, you're obviously going to get some slight improvement in processing of the images, and you should get some slight improvement in the stabilization of video as well. The P20 has either 4 or 6 gigs of RAM, the P30 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. So not too much difference there, it's a couple of gigs of RAM. You should be getting better performance from the P30 overall with the new chip and slightly more RAM. And of course you have an upgraded Android operating system as well between the phones. But the other huge main difference between these two phones is on the cameras. The P20 has a main camera and it has a black and white camera as well. In my opinion, that black and white camera wasn't really that useful. In fact, Huawei have even said themselves that the reason they ditched the black and white camera is because it wasn't helping with imaging. What I read from that statement is that adding the black and white camera was a marketing ploy when they teamed up with Leica to use their name. It was a way to put an extra camera on the phone to make it sound better, but like Huawei have already said, didn't help with imaging. In any case, they have righted that wrong, and the P30 has an incredible camera setup. You get a main camera, 40 megapixels, you get an ultra wide camera, and you get that zoom camera as well, which has 3 times optical zoom. I am just so impressed with the cameras on the P30 and the P30 Pro. And more importantly, I believe they are a huge step up from the P20. Absolutely massive to have that single, basically, camera on the P20 to now have triple cameras with 3 times optical zoom on the next iteration of that product. So yes, I believe from the P20 to the P30, an absolutely huge upgrade. If you had the P20 and you were even considering trying to upgrade, the P30, I believe, is a big enough jump in terms of design, in terms of functionality, what you get out of the cameras and the processor to warrant an upgrade. If you have a Mate 20, then I think it's a different story. The Mate 20 is just a completely different beast. You actually get a really big screen, it's about 6.5 inches. That is an LCD screen, so you could possibly say that the P30 is beating it there, but actually the screen size is different, and in any case, the design on the front there on both of those phones is also very, very similar. And here's the thing, on the back of the Mate 20, you also get a triple camera setup. Now the zoom camera on the Mate 20 has 2 times optical zoom, where on the P30 it's 3 times optical zoom. But having slightly extra zoom in the P30, if you have the Mate 20, is not going to be worth the upgrade to buy a whole new phone. In terms of video capability, they're exactly the same as well, and in fact the Mate 20 and the P30 carry the same processor as well. That is the Kirin 980, and actually on the Mate 20 you get a slightly bigger battery, although that is probably to power the LCD screen. The fingerprint sensor on the Mate 20 is on the back. On the P30 that's moved to the front under the screen. But again, it's probably not worth the upgrade from the Mate 20 to the P30. I can definitely make the case for the P20 to the P30, but Mate 20 to P30, I just think they're too similar to warrant spending the money and buying a whole new phone. Alright, so how about the P30 Pro? How does this compare to the P20 Pro and to the Mate 20 Pro? Again, just to reiterate how impressed I am with the design on the P30 Pro. You get a 6.5 inch screen. This is a really big phone and it is quite thick as well. That is probably due to the camera in the back there, the way that Huawei have had to put in the zoom camera. It's just a bit thicker than other camera units. But having said that, I really love the design. Now, you get a curved screen on this one. It really does remind me of the Mate 20 Pro screen. They are both curved, they're both OLED. Of course, the P20 Pro didn't have a curved screen. That was a flat screen and it shared a lot of the design from the P20, so you get that big notch at the top. You also get the big bezel at the bottom that has the fingerprint sensor in the bezel. If you have a P20 Pro, then going to the P30 Pro is an entirely different phone. You go from a flat screen to a curved screen, you go from a big notch to virtually no notch. You go from a huge bezel with a fingerprint sensor to no bezel and an under-screen fingerprint sensor. The P30 Pro from the P20 Pro is night and day. The P30 Pro from the Mate 20 Pro is a tiny difference. It's still an upgrade in my opinion, but again, the design between the Mate 20 Pro and the P30 Pro is very, very similar. If you have a P20 Pro and you want to upgrade, but you don't like curved screens, then you may be looking at the P30. The P30 and the P30 Pro have given us much bigger screens than the P20 series versions. We are getting an improved chip, obviously the same as before, going from a 970 to a 980. The 4K video recording and the slow-mo that you get out of both of the devices is again the same. The size of the battery is about the same, around about 4,000 milliamp hours. They both have OLED screens, but the P30 Pro screen is bigger, so you'd have to say that battery power probably evens out over the two phones considering the new chip but the bigger screen. And you also get wireless charging on the P30 Pro, which you didn't on the P20 Pro. The P30 Pro also has reverse wireless charging if you need that. So there are some incremental upgrades. Definitely wireless charging, for me anyway, is a huge plus, although a lot of people still aren't bothered about it. The cameras between these two phones actually aren't hugely different. I think the P20 and the P30 cameras are night and day, but the P20 Pro and the P30 Pro cameras are actually more similar. What you get on the P30 Pro over the P20 Pro is that the second camera, instead of being a black and white camera, as is on the P20 Pro, you get an ultra-wide color camera on the P30 Pro. This is definitely more useful than that black and white camera they included on the previous device. Also on the telephoto camera, the P20 Pro does have a telephoto camera, 3x optical zoom. The P30 Pro has that unbelievable 5x optical zoom camera. Having that ultra wide camera plus the 5x optical zoom camera massively increases the range and focal length of the cameras on the phone on the P30 Pro versus the P20 Pro. On the P30 Pro, you're going from 16mm to 125mm. That is a huge range. On the P20 Pro, you're going from 27 to 80. It's not a massive range. So the P30 Pro is going to give you so many more options when taking photos over the P20 Pro. But if you have a Mate 20 Pro, is it worth the upgrade? Well, the design between these two phones is just so similar. The Mate 20 Pro has that bigger iPhone-esque notch. The P30 Pro gets rid of it and uses that really good looking water drop notch. But apart from that, they both have curved screens. They both have the same aspect ratio. They just both look very similar. From the Mate 20 Pro to the P30 Pro, it's probably not worth upgrading to a whole new phone. But there really is a huge difference, in my opinion, between the P20 series and the P30 series in terms of everything. The design, what's going on in the inside, the functionality of the phone with wireless charging, and the cameras as well.